Hey everybody, this is Perch, and a couple questions here. They got grouped. Is it just me? I hate the way Gmail functions with their mail, of how they move things around. This is an unfunctional UI. Whoever is responsible for this, no, I hate this. I hate this system. You're not doing email right. Anyway, so two questions we'll get in one. So the first is responding to this new kind of I don't know what's the right way to put it. It's not a company. It's called Artist Elite Comics, and it's billed as kind of I would say consortium. It's a grouping. You could call it a comic publisher, but I think a better way to put it is it's I don't know. It's a grouping of like-minded talents who are trying to gain efficiency of scale by marketing together and putting their stuff out. That's a very boring, dumb way of saying it. So I guess publisher is a better way to put it. Anyway, it looks good. It's run or at least pushed by artists, and it's about time we got something like that. I think we've lived for 20 years in a writer-centric kind of industry, and so I'm glad to see it. I'm glad to see the artists taking a stand and doing some things on their own. But this has been created by Tyler Kirkham, Ale Garcia, and Sean Hutchanko, and a number of other creators, which include Brett Booth, Ben Templesmith, Ryan Benjamin, Paulo Pantalena, Ali Garcia, Freddie Williams II, Jordan Gunderson, Bus Logic, Alan Quay, Miko Sion, Eric Basaluda, Chad Harden, John Boy Myers, Sora Sung, and Ryan Kincaid. And you've heard me talk about this, and there's been some other people joining as well. And the basic idea is they have their own creator-owned properties, their own IP, and they are going to basically kind of collaborate together to create a magazine or a kind of teaser for all these projects, which I think is smart. I think it's a clever thing to do. Where that magazine goes is an interesting question. Is it just going to be available online, or are they going to be clever and kind of get it into some different kind of stores so they can get some people out, some more word out? But basically, these projects is a way kind of to say, like, look, instead of doing the crowdfunding option where every book sits on its own, we're going to have a loose consortium of cooperation where we can cross-market each other's books and gain some scale between all of us. It's a smart idea. Depending on the structure of the company, and I don't know. Obviously, I talked to a couple of these people. I've interviewed a couple of them, and I should get them back on to ask. It's an area where if somebody disagrees with the rest of the group, it sounds like they could pull out or basically limit their involvement fairly easily. I don't think, for example, that Freddie Williams II is approving what Brett Booth is doing. They're both doing their own independent projects, doing their own independent things. They're just able to cross-market and promote each other, which should help. It should make it better to stand together than to operate alone. That's nothing wrong with that. Smart idea. The announcement has, I don't want to say got under the radar. It came out. It's been out for more than a week, and then for whatever reason, it hit the comic news sites the same day the Image union hit. So actually, back to this mail. This is the question. I remember the announcement a while ago about this being a wrestling fan, and the AEW joke writes itself. That's of course the one that Chris Jericho and CM Punk and Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson is in right now, among others. It's a good little wrestling promotion. However, I find it interesting that the official announcement of the story came out the same day as the Image Union announcement got completely buried by that news. I cannot shake the feeling a bunch of artists formed a new company and wants to sell directly to the consumer has some correlation to comic book employees wanting to form a union. So I don't think they're related. I think this is somewhat independent. I think this is, if I'm looking at the Image situation, I think it's some full-time FTE staffers at Image who are in Portland, who see a lot of union activity, who on social media are very engaged with labor rights and that kind of thing, and have said, we want to form a union because we want to be like some of our our heroes, the people we read about on social media. We should form a union. And wouldn't it be nice if we could form a union where we could demand more transparency and kind of solve some of our long-standing issues with management? Because, from everything that we've seen and now even comments since, the gap between management and the employees at Image seems pretty significant. And again, a problem that's existed for maybe 10 years or more. And I don't think it's related to this. I think that these artists kind of doing this, the one thing that AEW needs to do that I think hasn't really accomplished yet is they've got some excitement around the creative talents involved. The projects look great. A lot of this stuff looks gorgeous. Everybody knows, obviously a big fan of Ben Templesmith's work. He put together some stuff that I think is incredible. I've talked to Brett Booth before. Love what he does. His stuff's very dynamic. A lot of these names on this list do really amazing work. And so the AEW announcement has done a good job of showcasing that. But the one thing that AEW needs to do over the next month or so is to really get out what exactly does this mean as a label? Is this is it purely just a working relationship? Is there going to be a website with efficiencies of scale around merchandise and other things? Are we expecting people to sign on loyalty to the label itself, or is it going to be more just helping people find books? Like where exactly is this going? And that question needs to be answered. Unfortunately, I think that, in Bleeding Cool's case, who did cover this story, I don't think Newsarama or some of the others have. A lot of people are kind of ignoring it. One of the reasons they're ignoring it is the three main news sites, Newsarama, CBR, and Bleeding Cool. They have spent the last 10 years getting very close to writers and assistant editors, and they largely ignore issues with artists. I unfortunately, people could disagree. I got in a disagreement with somebody from Newsarama about that, but I'm like, let me just look at your front page. You preference the writers 90% of the time. The stories you have, what you're doing, you clearly move to writing. And I think part of it's because a lot of the people who write for these sites are hoping to be writers. So, that's where the path has gone. But what's happening is the artists are getting ignored, and AEW, to be successful, is going to have to figure out some ways to get around that and to get their message out in a world that really preferences the writers. Again, Bleeding Cool's, the reason they're going to publish that really comes down to the second paragraph, where they drag up all the dirt that they've had in the past about some of the people involved. That was their entire, Freddie Williams. It's like, let's bring up his controversy. Let's bring up Booth's and Templesmith's, and let's go into that. That's going to be their motivation for covering this. But it's really great work. Hopefully, it doesn't get forgotten. It was, I don't want to say bad timing, but the Image Union did wipe out the coverage of it. But even if that hadn't occurred, I'm not sure much would have been different, simply because of how the industry is geared to talk to writer issues. So something AEW has to do is just, get back, because in many ways, I think AEW and what they're doing here is definitely more in line with what the customers and the fans want. The fans and the customers, as we've seen from numbers historically, tend to preference the art. They tend to gravitate toward the art being the big deal. And so, that's where they naturally go. The news sites, meanwhile, continue to gravitate toward the writing. So it's an interesting, we've got a split of, what people want versus what they're being given. But anyway, so to answer that question, there you go. The second question came the same day, same person, is if I have a comment on the Justice Department filing an antitrust suit to block the merger of Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster. And the question is, will this have an impact in comics? The answer is no, at least not a tangible one. Obviously, some comics are being done through Simon & Schuster. Some are being done through Penguin Random House. I think there's probably a long-term impact here where if they're not merged, then, the world continues to be a little bit split. Maybe things cost a little bit more, or a little bit trickier to get. But in general, no. This is, first off, chances are this merger will still happen in some form or fashion. The Biden administration, who's obviously is part of the Justice Department right now, is arguing that this merger would harm competition in the publishing industry. It would definitely create one behemoth, and then everything would have to go through this. I would probably argue that if this merger did take place, it would make it, in theory, a little bit harder for independent publishers to kind of figure things out. Probably have a negative impact on places like Diamond. It would give people less room to negotiate and maneuver. That said, it is almost a certainty that Amazon is going to roll out print on demand and publishing options in the next 3 months. I know for a fact they are planning it. I know it's coming. And I think that this idea that if Penguin Random House and Simon & Schuster joined forces, that it would negatively harm the publishing industry, chances are Amazon would immediately rise up to become a very significant competitor there. So I don't think this impacts comics very much, but it'll be interesting to see where it all goes. Anyway, thanks for the questions. I appreciate it. Interesting times. Like to cover this stuff. And if you have questions or things, you can send me an email. You can write them in the comments below. And thanks for listening.